I live in a small neighborhood in Philadelphia called Spruce Hill. Spruce Hill is perhaps one of the few examples in North America of a streetcar suburb that still has a streetcar running through it. Multiple, in fact. Although no one calls them streetcars, trolley is the modern preferred term here. Anyway, when I moved here, I didn't realize how much I would fall in love with the place. Often, I wondered why I liked it here so much, and I spent a lot of time thinking. One of the explanations I was drawn towards about why I like this place was that this pocket of the city is great because of what it was originally built as, a streetcar suburb. The public transit access, the wonderful architecture, the walkable layout of the neighborhood, that's what makes Spruce Hill so great. That's why I love living here. It's a testament to how the cities we used to build were better for people, and how they still can thrive in the modern age. With that, I present a modern streetcar suburb. Spruce Hill sits west of Center City, across the Schuylkill River. Center City is the downtown part of Philadelphia, where many jobs and attractions are located. The neighborhood is bounded by Market Street in the north, Woodland Avenue in the south, and by 46th and 38th Streets by the sides. Though past 40th going towards 38th, you start to see signs of institutional land use by the University of Pennsylvania, which is very close by. Some of the notable landmarks in the neighborhood include the 40th Street Trolley Portal, Penn Alexander School, and my personal favorite, Clark Park. Knowing the context of its location, it begins to make sense why Spruce Hill was developed the way it was. With the invention of streetcars, workers could be housed in Spruce Hill and other nearby neighborhoods, take the streetcar into work, and take it back home. This alleviated development pressure in already crowded Center City, as well as providing more ample space for workers to live in rather than crowded buildings near their workplaces. And so development began in the 1850s and continued throughout the Gilded Age, before tapering off in the early 20th century. The most notable thing about Spruce Hill is its unique architectural style compared to most other places. While row houses and duplexes may not be common in a lot of places in North America, they certainly are in Philadelphia. But even Spruce Hill's style is something you would struggle to find elsewhere. By far the most common type of building found is what many here refer to as the Victorian twin. The Victorian twin consists of two houses, joined in the middle and sharing a wall. They are usually about 3 to 4 stories tall, built out of brick, with wooden trims lining doors and windows. Most also have unenclosed front porches, although some owners have opted to enclose their porches. A small alley also separates each Victorian twin from the next. With this unique building design, two different owners with different tastes and styles can each decorate their homes as they please, resulting in a fascinating combination of color and configuration on some properties. In addition to the Victorian twins, there are also many blocks of Queen Anne style duplexes. These are similar to the Victorian twins, however these homes are often even more ornate, featuring turrets, sharper slopes, and sometimes even small walkout balconies. Of course, there is the classic unbroken wall-to-wall style of simple yet efficient row housing. These blocks are often most similar to what would be found in other parts of Philadelphia. While not as elaborate as the other types, they still have small elements of style if you look closely. One of the more interesting blocks of row homes is a small section of Second Empire style row houses at 42nd and Spruce. They actually remind me a lot of row houses found in New York City. Also dotted around the neighborhood, though harder to find, are the mansion-style houses. These spacious homes are detached and their size more closely resemble modern suburban home sizes than the ones found during its own time period. Yet they are still more tightly packed than modern McMansions. And yes, the neighborhood does host apartment buildings as well. Although primarily pre-war mid-rise structures, there is new construction occurring along Chestnut and Walnut Street. However, there is a concern that most of this housing is meant for students of the nearby colleges, and that developers will seek to demolish existing historic structures to build more apartment blocks. Concerns like this have led the Community Association to work towards designating most of the neighborhood as a historic district in order to prevent these sorts of demolitions. Now time to get into why I love it here. There's a lot I'm going to be talking about, but I'll start with the idea of density first. Spruce Hill houses an impressive amount of people in such a small area. Now it's nothing like Manhattan or Chicago, but it's surprising nonetheless. Part of this is because of how closely all of the original homes were built, and how they were designed without modern spatial requirements. However, the most important key to the neighborhood's density comes from the subdivision of houses into apartments. I was surprised to learn that it's somewhat uncommon for only one family to use an entire home. Frequently, each floor of a home will house 1 or 2 apartments, or the house will be shared by groups of people in sizes of 5 to 8. The row homes and mid-level apartments are great examples of the missing middle housing concept that is so desperately needed in many communities across North America. Overall, the space available has been used effectively, and it leads to quality use without mass overcrowding. The layout of the streets and zoning also enhances the neighborhood. Many trolley lines tend to have commercial corridors down them. Along Baltimore Avenue, where the 34 trolley runs, there is a commercial corridor home to a plethora of small businesses. Ranging from cafes and bars to pet shops and bookstores, there is a wide variety of options. The small sizes of commercial fronts prevents larger box stores from taking hold and allows local businesses to flourish. Off the main corridors, most streets are one-way residential streets. The narrowness of the street, with parking on both sides, tends to slow down traffic, which allows for people to have peace and quiet near their homes. And nestled in these residential sections are small pockets of commercial at certain street intersections. These small bits of commercial further enhance an already great layout by allowing residents to have an even closer access to commercial rather than having to walk down to one of the main streets. There's also a heavy presence of greenery in the neighborhood. There are trees on almost every street, and these aren't newly planted trees either. Many are old and grown, providing lots of leaf cover and shade during the summer. Larger green space is also present in the neighborhood with the existence of the previously mentioned Clark Park, but also the Woodlands, a cemetery with walking and leisure space. Clark Park plays host to many events and gatherings, which I'll talk about later. The density of the neighborhood and its general layout result in an extremely walkable and pleasant neighborhood where you can easily live without a car. There are a multitude of grocery stores, bars, restaurants, shops, recreational space, and other necessities all within or right by the neighborhood. Spruce Hill is a microcosm of the idea of a 15-minute city, and anything not in the neighborhood is a short transit right away, which leads me to my next section. Finally, I get to talk about the fantastic transit access. Obviously, the trolleys are the main draw of the transit access, but why is that? Well, trolleys in West Philly are unique among many around the world. They operate for the most part like normal, having stops at every intersection and only stopping if there are passengers waiting to board, or if someone requests to get off. They also run at surface level, sharing road space with normal traffic. But past 40th Street, and 36th Street for Route 10, the trolleys go below ground into a tunnel, with its own right-of-way. This is key to why it's so good. Having its own right-of-way past 40th Street avoids the heavy traffic of the university areas and Center City. This provides uniquely fast access to the workplaces and attractions of Center City, yet still allowing stops in every block in the residential neighborhoods. The trolleys also provide great access and transfer opportunities to SEPTA's 2 main subway lines. You can transfer to the Broad Street line at 15th Street Station for quick access to North or South Philly, or transfer to the Market Frankford line at 30th Street for places east of Broad Street and into the lower northeast. The trolleys also don't just go into Center City from Spruce Hill, they also lead further west, so there is also access to other residential sections of West Philly. For fans of even heavier rail than the trolley, there are 2 Market Frankford line stops at the edges of the neighborhood. One stop at 40th Street and another stop at 46th Street. A fun fact is that you can actually see where the line emerges above ground around 44th and 45th Street. So for anyone living closer to Market Street, the subway is likely a faster option into Center City and beyond. And complementing the trolleys and subway are the decent number of bus lines that run through the neighborhood. The 21 and 42 both get you towards Center City and further west, the 30 can take you to north of Market Street, and the 40 takes you across the Schuylkill and down South Street towards Washington Square West and Society Hill. The 64 is also close by as well, leading down Washington Avenue. Frankly, this part is mostly subjective and based on my personal experiences living here in the neighborhood, but I think they're worth sharing. Especially because some of the culture and identity here is partially the result of topics that we discussed earlier, like the layout and walkability, or also the history and location. First, I'll talk about some of the influences on the neighborhood. The most notable influence is the presence of the nearby Ivy League college, University of Pennsylvania, called UPenn by most. Many UPenn students, both undergrads and grads, end up living on the fringes of the neighborhood, closer towards 40th Street. These students leave an obvious, but in my opinion, positive trace. Some of the houses have even become home to local chapters of fraternities and sororities. Demographically, the students of course skew young, leading to lots of partying and socializing on weekend nights. But we've all been young before, so who am I to judge? Penn Alexander School is also a notable influence, in that it attracts a lot of young families to move here. The school is a public, city-run K-8 school with a very favorable reputation, especially when compared to other Philly public schools. Because of this, many families with school-age children have moved here. I was perplexed with how many kids were running around in the streets when I moved here, but the presence of the school explained that occurrence. There's also a class of artists and alternative people in the neighborhood, chiefly musicians. My next-door neighbor, who's lived here since the 70s, once explained to me that Spruce Hill has always been a place for musicians to gather, and has a rich history in music and local bands. There's a scattering of houses whose basements act as small venues for local bands, and the neighborhood is also a host of Porch Fest every year. I think what every person here has in common is that they all care. People here are invested about where they live, even the ever-changing student population. Spruce Hill is an eclectic mix of people, each person bringing their own unique contribution to the identity and culture of this neighborhood. The population isn't nearly as homogeneous or transient as a place like Fishtown or Fairmount, and it results in a unique yet lovable mix. But once again, this is merely my own opinion, so please don't rip me apart for this. Any modern flair of any old concept will inevitably have some differences, but the core principles will remain the same. The people who lived in Spruce Hill in the late 19th century aren't the ones who live here now, yet both still live in a walkable neighborhood. Both live in a transit-accessible place. Both live in architecturally stunning homes. Both live in a place that was built first and foremost for the needs of people. That's what makes it so special. A lot of Spruce Hill hasn't changed for over a century because it hasn't needed to. It was great then, and it's great now. The sorts of development going on in North America today leaves a lot to be desired. Looking at places in the Sun Belt, or Florida, or even the modern suburbs of Philly today make me worried about the kind of future we're building. Winding cul-de-sacs of cheap suburban homes are not pleasant to live in. They're empty. Empty of transit, empty of character, empty of human interaction. But Spruce Hill isn't empty. It's full of life, happiness, sustainability, and hope. I hope that we can build a better place for people to live in. Because we did it over 100 years ago. We can do it now.
'Cause we feel like running around.